Mental health is physical wealth.
Hello, hello, hello. Today is Monday. It's Monday night, y'all. How was your day? I know a lot of people may still be on a like 4-day holiday or whatever, but I wanted to talk about something that's been really a hot topic. I really don't do that often, but this July 8th, 2024, I'm going to talk about it a little bit because it's a little disturbing what's going on. So, but first, I'm gonna give people a chance to get on because this is a live interactive show where I try to get people, to critically think, express thoughts that will invoke critical thinking and improve critical thinking skills for your mental health. Because a lot of times we're like really mentally disturbed because things just don't add up. It just doesn't make sense. And we're always like, well, that didn't make sense, but okay. And you acquiesce to go along with it. It has been a very exhausting holiday break for me. I don't know how everyone else's holiday break has been. So tell me, how was your July 4th? How was your Juneteenth? Have you been enjoying yourself or have you been wearing yourself out trying to enjoy some time off? These times where it's like, oh, well, I might not necessarily agree with the reason why we have time off, but I'm going to go along with it because I need a break. Hey, I'm not mad either way. If you're like, well, I'm doing it because, this is what I do. Or if you're like, well, I don't really care. It's just time off. Hey, whatever your thing is your thing. Hey, Sean Anthony, thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about the Black vote today. Now, it doesn't matter what culture you're from. We need to talk about the Black vote. And it's really great to hear multicultural perspectives on the Black vote. However, in the media, it seems like it's really one-sided where we're like only really hearing one side of what the Black vote should be. And that one side, I'm not talking about a culture, I'm talking about a political stance. We're only really hearing the political standpoint of, well, what Black voters should be doing or what they are predicted to be getting ready to vote for. So I wanted to talk about it from a different perspective, the lived perspective. For example, every voter, we live in this life. I know a lot of people don't realize, a lot of things about why America even exists, but not to go too deep in history, but there was a migration of different cultures that migrated to America because they wanted to escape monarchies, dictatorship, and being ruled over in too strict of a confinement. So whether it was religious, whether it was sexual preference, whatever the issue was, there was a great migration to America for people to have more liberties. So it was absolutely intriguing for me to watch and see how Trump's presidency came about and how it functioned during the time of his presidency. And prior to Trump actually getting elected, he made a lot of assertions that he made true on. I mean, he said that, oh, politicians are so stupid. I can be a Democrat and run as a Republican and do some really democratic things and make democratic decisions, and they wouldn't even know that I'm a Democrat because I'll be under the title of a Republican. And he said that he would expose a lot of things that happen behind closed doors, like grabbing women by the crotch. but he participated in a lot of things that a lot of people were like, man, you know, if you know that these things are controversial, why are you also participating in it? So it begs the question, um, a lot of times, why would anyone in politics believe that, oh, invoking the black name and saying, oh, well, black voters are going to vote for me, so you should vote for me too? I mean, it's like, okay, that's the cool people. So if the cool people doing it, then you should do it too. Like, wait a minute. Who said the black votes are in favor of Trump? I mean, I think black people really appreciate his candor. They really appreciate him exposing a whole lot of different things that were done behind closed doors, and admitting, because a lot of times African Americans are like, look, you know, I appreciate the fact that people are going to admit that they're causing harm, as opposed to smiling your face and say, oh, well, trust the process. And all the while knowing that you're just causing harm to the person that you're trying to tell to trust the process. So I think in that respect, black voters are appreciative of what Trump has done, to bring out more transparency. However, I don't believe that black voters are swinging in Trump's favor currently, because a lot of the code words, and black people are very familiar with code words, a lot of the code switching is stating there's going to be more of a problem that takes us back to what some people call a time where America was great. And if you look back in history, even during the Great Migration, where people were migrating from England, Russia, China, Korea, you know, they were migrating from all over the world to come to America to have more liberties. Even then, when they arrived here in America, it wasn't great. It wasn't great because the votes at that time were generally geared towards white men being in political power and governmental power and just power, period, over everything. Even though America at the time were just mostly farmers, it was like they wanted to dominate that too, even though they did not know how to farm. They still wanted to be the leader, the head of that. And it's like, as time progressed, and you still trying to figure out when was America great? African Americans are understanding that that code talking really supports the broader statement of, I want to be a dictator for a while. And it's like, if you wanted dictatorship, you could go over to where there's dictators. You don't have to turn this place that everybody migrated to into a place where it's no longer a democracy. It's a Democrat type of, well, the majority can vote, as opposed to no one gets a vote. No one gets to say, you're going to do what I say, when I say, how I say. A lot of African Americans are here because they helped to build this country, because their ancestors were forced here. So it's hard for me to believe that the black vote is swinging more towards a dictatorship, which their ancestors prayed to God to escape, more so than they praying to God for a dictator to come along and keep them enslaved. And it's like, even in a modern time today, we can see how African Americans are in such restraint, even with their jobs, schools, housing, redlining, all kinds of things. So it's really difficult for anybody who's actually living the Black experience in America to believe that the Black vote is going to go towards something that's supportive of a dictatorship in America. Hey, Daddy Lee, I appreciate you coming. What do you think? Do you think that, people, African Americans, are swinging more towards voting for Trump instead of voting for Biden? And I think that the presidential debate was really rigged, because not in a, maybe not rigged, but it was contrived to make the American voters question the competency of both leaders, whereas there's never been a situation like that debate before, where they were like, well, we're not going to give you any prompters, we're not going to have an audience, we're not going to restate the question after each person has spoken. And after the first person spoke and asked the question, the second person, we're not going to repeat the question for the second person. We're going to allow them to remark on what the first person said. And we're not going to bring it back to the attention of the people that, well, they were, distracted by what the first person said, that they didn't address the question that was provided. And it's like, instead, it was contrived to make it appear as though, oh, well, you're easily distracted. You can't remember. You can't stay on topic. You can't convey thoughts properly. And it's like, in the time that we're currently in, a lot of people are under such stress that it is difficult to stay on topic when somebody provokes you with a statement or a comment. It's not just about ageism. It is about stress. And that stress is causing a lot of people's bodies to be ill more often than it's ever been before. So somebody like Biden, who is a lot older, and somebody like Trump, who is a lot older, they're experiencing illnesses more frequently and in a different way than a lot of their younger counterparts. So it's not to say that anyone else would have been able to get up there, be provoked to that great extent, and stay as focused as we all would have liked to have seen it happen. So when people are going around saying, oh, well, Biden should step down because he's too old, can't stay on topic, and he's easily distracted, I don't think that that's an accurate depiction. And I think that, everybody has their ways, but for us to try to convince the world that the Black vote is going to swing toward away from Biden because of that, I think that's exaggeration. Hey, Eddie, thank you for coming. Y'all comment. Comment. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Am I far-fetched? Am I off? Is it like that's just my personal African American experience? Or are you experiencing this and you're like, well, a moment ago, we didn't care what the Black people were thinking. We didn't care what the Black people were doing. We're trying to keep our foot on their neck, like literally, and live stream it. And tell them, oh, trust the process, after their family members and loved ones keep dying by the hundreds. It's not even by the dozens, it's by the hundreds and thousands. And it's like, you still smiling in their face, telling them trust the process and vote for dictatorship. Vote for a person who can commit crimes and say, yeah, well, I did that, but hey, I can get out here on Wall Street and shoot a bunch of people and I'll still be liked and I'll still be voted for. That's cold talking to us African Americans. Well, we're understanding that you're saying you can get away with whatever you want to get away with, and nobody is going to oppose you. And it's like, the biggest question I have, I don't know, y'all jump in. But the biggest question I have is, how are you going to turn America into a dictatorship when everybody here has guns and an arsenal at home and in their cars and in places? And I understand that that's why a lot of African Americans are being arrested for legally owning guns. I get it. I totally get it, because you want to make sure that when you declare that this is going to be a dictatorship, you want to make sure that the people who agree with that, who are few, mind you, do not get ended as quickly, because now there's not as much of a pushback because you have arrested and taken away the guns from the very people you trying to victimize. So I get it why you're trying to do that, but at the same time, it's like that's not going to work out anyway, because it just never does. You cannot turn a democracy into a dictatorship and the people know it and they're armed. It's like, what? What you say, Eddie? Co-leaders don't care about anything but power, no matter how limited it may be. I think they do care. And I think that that's why they try to manipulate the people at the higher levels, like the one percenters who are financially backing this ideology, because they feel like, oh, well, we can control him. You couldn't control him when he was in office. And Trump said that. He said he won't be controlled. He won't be stifled. He won't be stopped. And you can't tell him what to say, when to say, and how to say it. And that's what we saw. That is exactly what we saw. And it's like, if you felt like you could control him and you learned that you could not, how is it possible that you're allowing this to continue and you thinking that African Americans are going to swing their vote towards Trump? And if Trump doesn't win, then he says that, oh, it was rigged, there's going to be a bloodbath and all these other things. A lot of times in history, especially in the Bible, what we have seen is when people try to do something and they're allowing people to know what it is, it doesn't end the way they think it's going to end. And if you're trying to say, well, there's going to be a bloodbath, there's already been a bloodbath. The majority of the people who have fallen are tired of falling. They're not swinging their vote towards a dictatorship. A lot of times we're seeing that African Americans are willing to go down in a fiery blaze, taking down as many people as they can with them, instead of going out into that silent good night quietly. A lot of people aren't publicizing that, but you have been able to see it and track it, because people don't want to revert back to a time of slavery where the slaves died and the slave master, though they were few, they conquered the many because they were afraid. But actually, in history, that's not true. There were a lot of African slaves who were brought here who chose to take out as many as they could instead of succumbing to a worse fate. And that's really what it comes down to. What's worse? What's worse? A lot of times we don't emphasize that because we don't want people to believe anything other than what we contrive for them to follow. A lot of African Americans have been classified as having mental imbalances. And even still, they are still held to the highest cognitive awareness, even though schools are not necessarily developed to help them to achieve that awareness, but they are being held accountable legally to things that they may have known a little bit about, but they didn't have the degree of understanding that their counterparts have. You think that the Black vote is not aware and that they're just going to swing to Trump because you said so, because you said, well, other Black people are. You're not even in their circles. How are you telling people that the Black vote is swinging towards Trump when you're not even a part of their circle? It's like, what are you saying? Why would you try to do that? Why are you trying to convince people of that? What'd you say? As any history shows that we'll grab the power for free. Napoleon, Hitler. Yeah, and a lot of people are seeing only the positive sides of such dictatorships and such swings of power. But nowhere in history have you ever been able to find that the victims of people have ever, okay, let's say Trump wants to be a dictator and everybody is like, no, but everybody's lying and saying, well, everybody's saying this is okay. And then you try to go and take it by force. There's going to be pushback. Just like with January 6th, we saw pushback. And that young lady, a young life, needlessly gone because of that pushback. It's like we're not trying to understand that we're armed. And we say, as a whole, regardless of the minority vote, this is a democratic country. What'd you say, Tony? Thank you for being here. I am in circles. Met someone last week at a relative's house. Yeah, it's because you are living the Black American experience. And it's like, I've seen some people who are African American, just like one person out of all the people that I know. And the last time he stated he voted for Trump over Hillary, but he was a guy and he had some points that were more against women being in leadership than, oh, well, any other reason. So I understand why they're saying if Biden steps down, then all the contributions go directly to his vice president, Kamala. And America is, I don't know if they're ready to see not just a woman, but an African American descent woman. It's not like she's completely African American. She's multicultural, like a lot of us. I'm multicultural, but I identify as African American. And it's like, nobody cares about the Russian Jew in my blood. Nobody cares about the Scottish people in my blood. Nobody cares about how white people are actually a part of my cultural background. They only care that I identify as African American because the color of my skin. And it's like, when you have that lived experience where it's like, nobody cares that you also a part of me and I'm a part of you, but because you mostly identify as because I said so, then I can also tell you, well, I said all of you African Americans are going to vote for Trump. So vote for Trump. Just like you acquiesced and said, well, I'm going to deny all my other cultural background and say, well, yeah, I'm African American. When you're not just African American, it's not just Black, it's everything. What you say? Sorry, I'm late, battling the nasties now. I was probably Black in the circles to try the Democrats last week. Hey, and I love to hear what you have to say about it, Tony. What you say, Eddie? Historically, they have always been this. And you know what? back when women's suffrage was going on and women couldn't vote, it was like, I think I'm stuck. But anyway, it was like, I don't know what's going on with my Wi-Fi. I'm froze. But anyway, it was women, they couldn't vote. They chose African American men, not African American women, not women, period. They chose that men should be the ones who have a voice. So historically, we're seeing what? We're seeing that women are like a second thought. Teddy, am I froze on your end, or I don't know? Am I froze on your end? I don't know. Okay. Something happened with the internet. They don't like the truth. I'm just saying. What you say, Eddie? Black voters have been valuable since then. And you know what? What I was saying was, when it came down to who's gonna vote, they didn't let women vote. They said black men, not black women, not white women, but black men. So they only really wanted the males vote, and they wanted women to stay at home and take care of at home. And then when the world wars happened, the women had to go to work. And the women were like, look, we sick of y'all. We sick of the oppression, because migrating here to America, that was not the promise that we're supposed to realize. And y'all got some good points in these comments. Oh, you can hear me. It's like, well, that's, thank you. You can hear me. I couldn't see even the comments because I was froze. But it's like, if we're going back to try to make America what it was before all of these liberties that we're currently experiencing were actually realized, then African American is not the focus. It's not. It's the women. It's the women. And then secondly, it's the African vote. So it's like, they get these women all riled up and say, well, all the women are voting this way. All the women are doing this and that. And it's like, the people who are making these accusations, they're not even a woman. They're not even from the community of being around women, to hear women say, yeah, grab me by the coochie. I love that. Yeah. Take my vote away from being able to say what happens to my body once I get pregnant, or once I'm married, or even if I'm not married, and just oppress me. It's like, what? It's like, how can you convince people that everybody is in agreement with this, just for the few who might be or might fear and go along with it and acquiesce? You might say one thing, but when you get ready to go to cast your ballot, you might do something else. And that may incite a physical problem like January 6th, because a lot of people said, oh, well, the popular vote is going to be this way. And when it didn't come out that way, it seemed to cause a reaction we've never seen in America before, to the extent that we have. We've seen live streaming of African American men be assassinated, but we have never, ever, ever seen a vice president, a white man Christian belief, almost get, well, I'm gonna leave it alone, but because we're not talking about it. We're not talking about it. But I'm happy that he escaped, because I don't think America was ready for that. I don't think anybody was ready to see that. But anyway, what'd you say? Black women share the vote women with their husbands. White women have privilege. Well, I have to say, African American women, they support their men. They support their men, even if it's only known behind closed doors where only they can talk freely. The woman, for example, I support what Eddie does, and I try to get him to, calm down when he's a little bit not calm or, going in the wrong direction. I try to gently guide him, but I don't do it in public. And I try to, we discuss things, and it's like people feel like African American women don't do that. We're tricking our black men and leading them down a wayward path, and that's really not the accurate depiction. It's more, again, people contriving hearsay and hoping that everybody believes it and falls for it and follows in with it. It's amazing that kind of work will feel placed in the white them rolling themselves back centuries. But you know what? I'm just gonna say a lot of times people fail to understand what oppression does, especially to a woman. A lot of times people fail to understand this female experience, which we've been noticing with the LGBTQ plus community, the struggle and outwardly fight for people to understand what it's like to be a woman. And I the only thing I can really say about, women rolling it back, I think is more unintentional and forced than anything else, than voluntary. I could be wrong, but I have a lot of friends and family members who are white, and I've not heard any of them, out of all of them, say anything that's in alignment with what people say about their opinion and their desires for these political stances. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna put it that way as nice as I can. And as clear, hopefully, as possible. It is not uncommon for us being strong. Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like, believe it or not, we're fighting that more than we're fighting anything else. It's more of a fight for women's rights than anything else. We don't need calm. Calm never cured anything. Joking. Yeah, I feel you. And I don't know if we're going to get calm if they keep doing what they're doing. I remember seeing Trump peeking over the side to show his wife voted. Oh my God. And you know what? That goes right back to when I said a lot of women are afraid to speak up. A lot of women are afraid to speak out because women do not have the protection of men like they need. And we're seeing that with the attempt of the reverse of Roe versus Wade. We're seeing that when women are constantly being raped, molested, and everything that's happening to them, and there's no real protection. And what do I mean by real protection? I mean consequences that will dissuade people from taking advantage of women. And if these majority men who disagree with the country trying to be a dictatorship would be more supportive to protect the women, I think it'll be more blatantly obvious how women feel and how they're truly going to vote when those ballots are secret and they're made known how they actually voted. The self-soothe American female support money. Yeah, Black women. I think that's one of the main reasons why they try to keep women oppressed. So like in the workplace, they have the glass ceiling. And even when women began to work during the world wars and they were in the factories and everything working, they kept them oppressed even financially then, even though academically and scholarly they are educated enough to have the work performance of their counterparts who are paid more. They still keep them oppressed. And I think that that's a main reason why, because the money is power. Oh, it's voluntary. We see those rallies, those wives dealing with. But again, I understand what you're saying, Tony. And yeah, I get it. But you don't know what they got to deal with when they go back home. You don't know that they're saying, oh, you didn't act like I didn't believe you. You didn't show a convincing enough performance that you support this. And they get knocked around. They're getting beat. Their stuff is happening and they don't have protection. Alice Paul told I would be, it was stop taking money race. Yeah. I think a major part of the reason why we don't really talk about how women are being oppressed in these matters and trying to justify their oppression instead of actually talking about it, I think it's because, yeah, they're more powerful than you think. They're more, and then it's like they're in the majority of population. It's like what, 5 women to every 1 male. So it's like if you were to give the women more support, and I think a lot of women, especially people who are supportive of the LGBTQ community, they are more in support of women's rights and women's power and women's ability to have a voice and be protected in having that voice. I think that if we were to get more people to come out and speak against not protecting the women, not paying the women properly, speak against all of these wrongs that's happening to the women, then we would see a better or more accurate depiction of what the popular vote for America is, for American president is. And I think by not knowing what the popular vote really is, it's feeding, it's fueling the rage of people who want to believe that everybody wants a dictatorship and everybody wants to oppress somebody, whether it's for their gender, age, or cultural or religious belief. European best interest. History shows, I'm gonna answer what Tony said. He said, so you believe they're being best into submission. I'm gonna give you examples. Overseas, women are so oppressed that they can be buried alive because they didn't submit to whatever the rule of that man was, just the man of the house. So do I think, oh, you said beat into, yeah, I get it. But from what I see from the lived experience of a woman, and I say it on Women's History Month or Women's Month, I say it a lot. Yeah, we're not getting the treatment that we need in order for us to say out loud. We'll say it in private in the voting booths. We'll say it, and then somebody saying, well, y'all didn't really vote for him because y'all all said that you would vote for this way and that way. And really, we didn't. Black women raised millions to support the suffrage despite them using racial language and calling her man the savage. It got deep in this. Yeah. The suffrage movement is a really great example of, and it's not that I believe, it's what I see. It's not what I feel, it's what I know. A lot of women can't say anything. So I'm saying something because my husband supports it. If he didn't, would I say anything? Probably not. Why? Because I live here. I live with my husband. So why would I say anything that could get me bested or beat or whatever behind closed doors? Man, I feel threatened by women, same as whites fear minorities coming into power. I feel you, sis. And you know what? That's a great point. That's a really great point. And I'm happy that you said something. Because yeah, a lot of times women, they get the woman who is being oppressed to dominate other women into suppression, because that woman may be in a household where there is a man, and the other woman may be in a household where there is no man. And even if there is, it may be a man that's not as dominant and helpful towards that woman, and they sway that woman by Maslow's hierarchy of human needs: the feelings to belong, the feeling to get along, the feeling to just have your needs met in some sort of capacity. It's more psychological than you think. But yeah, we see it all the time with the women. And that's why they're always trying to say, well, all the women are voting this way. Now they're saying all the Black people are voting this way. And when it doesn't happen, you have a situation like the January 6th. And unfortunately, the pushback is never directed towards the people it should be, the people who push those people into that situation of no return and fatalism. God, was it still part of that place? Yeah, I think that it is a large part of the belief that people feel like they can be, that African Americans and women can be controlled because they're easily manipulated. That's not really the case, especially when you finally put weapons in their hands and you push them to the edge where they don't have nothing to lose. They can't even go to school and be safe. They can't even worship their God in a safe environment. They can't even have the protection of their body or to say so over their body should they be raped, molested, or something else happen to them where they're pregnant and their life is on the line, and they have to decide to live and remove the baby because the baby won't thrive anyway outside of the womb, but you will still choose for the woman to perish. Why? If it was a man, you certainly wouldn't. Well, there's a whole lot of women and we don't really need that many women because women, we don't really want to hear what they have to say anyway. Globally, internationally. I mean, you don't really want to hear what women have to say. And that's been historical for quite some time. So it's really odd that we want to constantly convince people that, you know, if I say this is how everybody's doing, you'll go along with it. What you say, Eddie? Funny part is they were supposed to be abolitionists until they Black men got before. Just like with Trump when he said, well, I'm really a Democrat, but when it came down to it, he really a dictator. He's not a Republican or a Democrat. But I'm just saying, that's what he said. I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. That's what he said. And I believe him. When people tell you who they are, you believe them. And if it was not the case before he became president, and it's the case now after he had become president, whenever that point turned, that's when you have to understand that, are you still along with that person? Are you still ride or die? Even though that person is showing you you'll be sacrificed to? I don't know. I can't call it for everybody. I'm just saying you might want to get to a safe place and speak out. We call the politics mean conflict. They really know humanity in America. You know, I don't know if there ever was intended to be, considering how America got its name and how it came to be so popular of a location. You don't have to be done, but I'm just saying what we can track is that when we say, oh, everybody's going to do it, then everybody follows along like lemmings. That's not true. That's not true. Nobody's in a situation where they're all going to go along or go the way of the dodo bird, or the lemmings, or the popular quote unquote vote. I remember when Obama came into presidency, Eddie and I were stationed in Colorado, and I was watching the news trying to figure out what was going to happen. And they said that the news was reporting, the Colorado local news was reporting, the popular vote was not in favor of Obama. And they were all celebrating that Obama wasn't president and he wasn't going to be president. And then turned out that he was. And I don't know why that didn't end up in like a bloopers newsreel, but that was infamous. It's burned in my brain how that reporter was like, what? What do you mean? What? I mean, he became livid. He said, no way. And then they had to hurry up and cut because he started to voice his inner thoughts. His inner voice came out. And that was a clear reaction and understanding of what happens when you lie to people and tell them how a popular vote is going to be. You're lying. And people they don't know. They're not identifying it as a lie. They're taking you as, somebody who they can trust to tell them the facts, to tell them what's really happening, and to defend that to the end. And because it's a Democratic Party, you're like, well, I can't accept that, even though this is a democracy of a country. It's like, so are you saying you want a dictatorship, but you don't want to say it? So it's like, how can you say you want a dictatorship without actually saying you want a dictatorship? People spread love to their own. Yeah, that's a great way to sum that up. But the problem is when they realize the reality and they have to live that experience. And they're telling you, if we have to live that experience, there's going to be a bloodbath. And that's why a lot of people are geared up. They're geared up. And they're like changing the method of schooling for their children because they want to protect their bloodline. That was the real. Yeah, that was, yeah, you're right. That was the re-election. Because I remember my Uncle Fred Shuswell had already passed. And I was really interested in that particular presidential election, giving the pushback from the few who had gone on to special news broadcasts and stated very clearly there was going to be a race war. So it was like, it was not necessarily where people were feeling oppressed. They felt comfortable to say that that's what they're going to do. They felt comfortable to say very clearly and make it very plain. But since then, we've seen very few young white men come out and declare that, yeah, that's what it is. And then they get pushed under the rug and get permanently silenced because they're like, don't tell them. Don't tell them, because the last civil war we had in America, we lost. We lost to democracy. Don't tell them, because they have guns like we do. And if you tell them, there's going to be a pushback and we won't realize what we want. We won't live the experience that we really want. This is scary. Yes, I agree. And it's like it's nothing new under the sun. This has happened before, but in those times, the people who were about to be victimized didn't have arsenals outside of the declaration of a civil war. Now, the declaration of civil war, yeah, they had arms, but now it has not been declared. There's been no real accountability for such a thing. And I think that's a large part too, because a lot of people who are unaware and don't want to believe, like you said, they spread love to their own narrative. They don't want to believe that that's what it is. But if they publicly announce it prior to the election stating that there's going to be a dictatorship, then they won't agree. They'll take up arms and side with the very people that was intended to be victimized. And that's why they have to try to convince people, oh, yeah, the black vote, they're going to vote for. No, they're not. Oh, all the women, they voted for. No, they didn't, because you didn't win. What did you say, Eddie? I'll punish this with you. Yeah, and it's like when you try to have the minority to bully the majority, don't give them guns and plenty of ammo and nothing to live for. They have nothing to live for. You're killing their kids. The kids can't go to school. These kids are graduating. These African American children are graduating and they are praising like crazy. They dancing their heads off because they're still here to have graduated. After all odds, they're dying by the thousands in the youth. In schools, of all places, the place that's supposed to be the most protected environment. Why? Because it's diverse and everybody wants their children to be protected. It's not historical. Just saying. If we look back in history, we will see that wasn't what it was historically. And that's why, books and African American education is different than it is with anywhere and anyone else. I'm just saying, we want to fuel the narrative that we want, but when it doesn't provide the lived experience that we were hoping for, and we're forced to understand we don't have nothing else to live for, then what? And you take their kids away from them. You take away their ability to eat. You take a house. It's $500,000. People can't even get jobs. They can't pay the rent, the mortgage, nothing. And it's like you take away everything and you play with their money at the last thing. And it's like, look, now you play with my bloodline. You play with my education. You play with my housing. Now you playing with my money where I'm taxed up the wazoo where I can't even afford anything anyway. Now they have nothing. And it's messing up their head to the point where they do not care what you say. They don't care what you say. And if you try to force it on them, the bloodbath that you're thinking is going to be, it's going to be something totally different. You're not tracking it properly. And you should be tracking it properly. Thank you, Eddie. What'd you say? I have to go now, but I look forward to more conversations. Glad I found your channel. I appreciate you coming, sis, and I appreciate you interacting, because I try to get people to understand it's not just Tina's voice. It's not just my opinion. It's a lot of women that can't say anything. It's a lot of men who don't say anything openly, but when it goes behind closed doors and people start to vote, what they didn't say will be realized and will be brought to light. And you cannot threaten that, oh, well, it's going to be a bloodbath, because the bloodbath that you thinking it's going to come right back on you. Stop saying that. Stop trying to do that. Everybody can be happy. Just keep it a democracy and keep everything cool. Start to build up childcare again so people can go to work. Start making brick and mortar schools safe. And not just that, but online schooling too, because predators are everywhere. We saw that with the with everything. I go back and watch a couple of my binge watch a couple of my episodes where I talk about Corinthian colleges. That was a school too, and there's a lot of things that we're seeing where oppression is not as targeted as you may think. And when we stop to really look at it in hindsight, we find that we may have erred on the wrong side. We can change that. We can change that right now. Acknowledge it. Take accountability and stop it. Be bold. If you can't be bold, unarmed, get your arms and be bold. But remember, they don't make bulletproof houses. They don't make bulletproof houses. So when you sit there and you threaten people and you say, oh, well, there'll be a bloodbath. Don't do that. Don't say that. They don't make bulletproof golf courses either. I'm just going to put it out there because you think you're safe and stuff keeps happening to show you're not safe either. You can't go around threatening people that don't have nothing to live for because you're going to take everything away. And then you think they're not going to know. And because you smile in their face and say, oh, trust the process. We know what the process is. We know what the code talking is. And the ballots, don't try to say what the popular vote is when you are not a part of that circle. And you know that the parts of the circle that you are a part of, you know they're being oppressed to say what they're saying. And you cannot physically go in there and make sure that they voted the way you're saying that you're making them, you're forcing them to vote. You can't do that. So stop being upset because you're feeding a narrative that you love when that's not going to be the lived experience. They do make turkey arrows. They can also be, hey, it's like people constantly find ways to arm themselves. And it's like, this is America. We shouldn't have to be so heavily armed. We shouldn't have to be so heavily guarded. We shouldn't have to be forced to be in a situation that we are oppressed to the point where we don't have nothing to live for. So we do whatever on our way out. That shouldn't be the case. Stop pushing people to that point because historically, that is what it was. Back when people were back when white people were trying to force Africans away from Africa to come to America to be slaves, that's what happened. There was a pushback. And a lot of people decided they'd rather die and take people out with them than to be so oppressed, than to be a slave, than to be humiliated. You took everything away from them. They have nothing else. So they're going to do whatever. It is historical. The mental health of people can be tracked if you look and stop lying about what happened and about what's happening. I'm just saying it's many ways. And a lot of people, they don't just have guns and bullets and swords and samurai blades and arrows and stars and people doing stuff. We don't have to get to that point. We don't have to get back to that, I should say. We can move forward to an improved progress of America. We don't have to feel compelled to lie to the minority group of people who are, but in some kind of delusion that people are really going to say, oh yeah, yeah, this is what we should do. We should all do. And they say, oh yeah, we're going to do that. Yeah, sure. That's what's happening. And you're not getting it. You're not getting it, but you can get it. You can stop and say, hey, I was just joking. Let me step down and deal with my legal problems. Let me give voice to democracy and stop trying to assassinate people who are normally classified as having a complexion for the protection. I'm just saying, because I don't think that that group of people appreciated that. I don't think that group of people appreciated what happened to that young lady in the January 6th pushback. I don't think that the popular vote is going the way that a lot of people would like to believe, just for the controversy, just for the funds, tickles and giggles. I don't think as much as, you're going around with the Asian hate, the Russian hate, the African hate, all the hate. I don't think there's enough hate in the world to help you to understand any clearer than I'm trying to tell you right now. Get the hint. The people smiling in your face just like you smiling in theirs, telling them to trust the process, and they smiling in yours, telling you, oh yeah, we're going to trust the process. And meanwhile, you better not blink. You better not turn your back, because when they realize they don't have nothing to live for, they're coming for you. And that's what we've seen. We don't have to do that anymore. We can stop. The mental health of the state of America, the state of the world, it's not going to support that. So stop trying to tell people what the black vote is going to be when you are not a part of that community, and the people who you're forcing or manipulating to lie and support your narrative, they're really not going to support you. They're going to take your money. They're going to take all the support, but they're going to do the, trust the process. Yeah, I'm with you. Then they're going to go, as they vote for something else. I'm just saying, that's been my time. I got to go. Remember, mental health is physical wealth. See you next episode. Teddy, take us out of here.